Friends, this story is so terrifying that if you're not ready to face fear with all your heart, it's better to avoid reading it. We give you a full warning that this story contains events that might send chills down your spine. If you still dare to read it, remember, this is a journey where you will confront your fears and sacrifices. And yes, if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can read more such spine-chilling tales. Now, step into this haunting world, but tread carefully, for this story will take you to a place where there is no way back. The Cursed Highway. It was a dark, stormy night. Heavy clouds loomed over the sky, and lightning streaked the horizon. Jake, a software engineer, was driving from San Francisco to Los Angeles after a late-night shift at work. Exhausted but eager to reach his family, he took the infamous Route 66 shortcut, a road many avoided after sunset. The highway was eerily silent. No cars, no gas stations, just an endless stretch of asphalt surrounded by dense woods. Unbeknownst to Jake, this was no ordinary highway. Locals called it the Cursed Highway, rumored to be haunted by spirits of those who had met tragic ends here. Jake didn't believe in such tales, but as he drove deeper into the lonely stretch, strange things began to happen. The strange start. The silence in his car was broken by the sudden static of the radio. Startled, Jake glanced at the controls. He hadn't turned it on. Before he could switch it off, a faint, chilling voice emerged from the crackling static. "Help me! Save me!" Jake froze. His hands trembled as he quickly turned the radio off. Trying to shrug it off as a technical glitch, he kept driving, but his unease only grew. The ghostly encounter. A few miles later, Jake noticed a figure standing by the side of the road. A woman in a white dress. She raised her hand, signaling for help. Jake hesitated, but decided to stop. Rolling down the window, he asked, "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need a ride?" Without meeting his eyes, the woman softly replied, "Please, take me a little further down the road." Jake, eager for company on the desolate road, unlocked the door. As the woman climbed into the passenger seat, a sudden chill filled the car. "Where are you headed?" Jake asked. "Just take that turn ahead," she said, pointing to an unmarked dirt road leading into the woods. Jake hesitated. "That's not part of the highway." Her voice grew cold and firm. "I said, take that road." Into the haunted path. Reluctantly, Jake turned onto the dirt path. The air grew colder, heavier. Suddenly, the headlights flickered and went out, plunging the road into darkness. Jake stopped the car and got out to check the lights. When he returned to the car, the woman was gone. Panic set in. He turned around to scan the area and noticed a shadowy figure standing behind him, reflected in the car's rearview mirror. Jake spun around, but no one was there. The blood-red warning. Desperately trying to calm himself, Jake climbed back into the car. But before he could start the engine, the windshield fogged up with what looked like handprints, bloody, smeared and multiplying. Then came the voices. "You don't belong here. Turn back before it's too late." The ground beneath the car began to tremble, and the road ahead glistened as though it was covered in blood. Out of the crimson tide, ghostly hands emerged, reaching for Jake. The old man's tale. Terrified, Jake bolted out of the car and ran down the path, stumbling upon an old man sitting by a gnarled tree. "Another one caught by the highway," the man muttered. Jake gasped, "What is happening here? How do I get out?" The old man looked up, his weathered face pale. This road isn't for the living. Decades ago, a bus crashed here, killing everyone on board. Their souls never left, and they won't let anyone who crosses their path leave either. Jake's voice trembled. What do I do? You must leave your car behind and walk out of the woods, the old man warned. But whatever you do, don't look back, no matter what you hear. The terrifying escape. Jake followed the man's instructions, walking through the pitch-dark woods. The air was filled with whispers. His name. The voices of loved ones calling out to him. Jake, it's Mum, turn around. Jake, help me, it's Emily. But he didn't stop. He didn't look back. As he reached the edge of the woods, a deafening explosion sounded behind him. Against his better judgment, Jake turned around. His car was engulfed in flames, and through the fire he saw her, the woman in white, standing unharmed, smiling eerily. Around her were shadowy figures, their faces twisted in anguish. Jake ran until he collapsed on the side of the road, where a passing trucker eventually found him. Ryan's investigation. Months after Jake Sullivan's harrowing encounter on the cursed stretch of Route 66, the story reached the desk of Ryan Carter. A 35-year-old investigative journalist, Ryan was known for delving into the strange and inexplicable. Ghost towns, urban legends, haunted houses, he had covered them all. Each time, his skepticism had prevailed, leaving him to debunk the tales as nothing more than folklore. Armed with his tools and unwavering disbelief, Ryan set out for the cursed highway, unaware that this would be his final investigation. The journey begins. Ryan arrived at the infamous stretch of Route 66 just as the sun dipped below the horizon. The fading light cast long shadows across the deserted road, the surrounding woods darkening to an impenetrable black. The air was heavy, oppressive, as though the forest itself were alive and waiting. This will make a great opener, Ryan mused, speaking into his recorder. He described the eerie atmosphere with the enthusiasm of someone who had no real fear of the supernatural. Hours passed, uneventfully. Ryan drove up and down the highway, occasionally stopping to snap photos of the dense woods and barren asphalt. He spoke casually into the recorder, detailing the lack of activity. Another overhyped ghost story, he chuckled. But as midnight approached, the atmosphere began to shift. The static and the voice. The first sign came from the car's radio. Though Ryan had turned it off hours ago, it crackled to life on its own, spewing harsh static. Startled, he glanced at the controls, his hand hovering over the power button. Before he could turn it off, a voice emerged from the static. A faint, pleading whisper. "Help me. Save me." Ryan froze. The voice was so faint it could have been his imagination, but the desperation in the tone sent a chill down his spine. "It's just interference," he muttered, forcing a laugh. He reached out and turned the radio off. This time, it stayed silent. Shaking off the unease, Ryan continued driving. He tried to focus on the road, but the whisper lingered in his mind. The woman in white? Several miles later, Ryan saw her. A pale figure stood by the side of the road, illuminated by his headlights. She wore a flowing white dress that seemed to ripple, despite the stillness of the air. Her face was partially obscured by her long, dark hair, but there was no mistaking her intent. She raised her arm slowly, pointing down the road as if beckoning him to stop. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. Every instinct screamed at him to drive past, but the journalist in him couldn't resist. He slowed down, rolling down his window just enough to shout, Do you need help?" The woman didn't respond. Instead, she turned her head toward him, revealing hollow, lifeless eyes. Ryan's heart pounded as he slammed his foot on the accelerator, speeding past her. As he glanced in his rearview mirror, his blood ran cold. She was no longer on the side of the road. She stood directly in the middle of it, her gaze locked on him. "How?" Ryan choked, his words cut off by sheer terror. The path into darkness. Determined to rationalize the encounter, Ryan pulled over a few miles down the road. His hands trembled as he picked up his camera, reviewing the footage. To his horror, the woman was visible in every frame. But each time he passed her, she grew closer to the camera. Her face more detailed. Her expression more sinister. Before he could process what he'd seen, a noise drew his attention. It was faint at first, a soft rustling, like leaves, brushing against each other. But it grew louder, closer, until it sounded like footsteps circling the car. Ryan's flashlight cut through the darkness as he stepped out of the vehicle, heart hammering. He saw nothing but trees and shadows. Then, in the distance, he spotted a narrow dirt path veering off the main road. "This has to be it," he muttered, convincing himself that following the path would lead to answers. And perhaps the truth behind the legend. Deeper into the unknown. The dirt path was rough and uneven, forcing Ryan to leave his car behind and continue on foot. The forest seemed to close in around him, the trees towering like silent sentinels. The deeper he went, the quieter it became, until even the sound of his own footsteps felt intrusive. Then came the whispers. They started as faint murmurs, indistinct and overlapping, but soon grew louder, clearer. "Turn back. You don't belong here. She's waiting." Ryan gripped his flashlight tighter, his breaths coming in shallow gasps. He swung the beam wildly, trying to locate the source of the voices, but saw nothing. "Stay calm," he whispered to himself, though his voice betrayed his fear. The final encounter. The path ended abruptly in a small clearing. At the center stood an old, dilapidated bus, its windows shattered and its frame rusted. Ryan's heart sank as he recognized the vehicle from Jake's description. This was the bus that had supposedly crashed decades ago, killing everyone on board. As he approached, his camera captured eerie details. Handprints smeared across the dusty windows, scratch marks along the metal siding. The air grew colder, and the whispers became a deafening chorus. "Help us. Run! She's here." Ryan's flashlight flickered, and for a moment he was plunged into darkness. When the light returned, she was there, the woman in white, standing inches away. Her face was no longer obscured, it was grotesque, her skin pale and stretched tightly over her bones, her mouth twisted into a sinister smile, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Ryan stumbled backward, dropping his flashlight. The camera caught his final moments, his terrified face illuminated by the faint glow of the moon, as the woman lunged toward him. The aftermath. Days later, a search party found Ryan's abandoned car near the entrance to the dirt path. His camera was discovered lying in the clearing, its battery drained, but its footage intact. The video ended with a blood-curdling scream, abruptly cutting to black. Ryan Carter was never seen again. His disappearance added another chapter to the legend of Route 66, solidifying its reputation as a place where the living and the dead collide. To this day, locals warn against traveling the cursed highway after dark. They speak of the woman in white and the journalist who dared to challenge her, only to become another victim of the haunted road. Would you be brave enough to investigate the truth, or foolish enough to ignore the warnings? Friends, this story is entirely fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. The locations, characters, and events depicted are not real. Any resemblance to actual places, persons, or events is purely coincidental. The intent of this story is not to offend anyone's sentiments or promote superstition. Please regard it as a work of fiction. If you enjoyed this story and want more thrilling tales, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more spine-chilling content.